How about now? There we go. How's it going? Hey, Thindle. Good to see you. Happy Sunday. Hope you're doing well. Um, for those that stumble upon the stream and don't know, I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of this website, Tech Interview Guide. And yeah, Sunday is kind of career prep. Let's get everybody's job hunt kicked off for the week. Do some resume reviews, all kind of stuff. So if you got questions about getting a job in the tech industry, definitely hit me up. Let me know. Um, let's see. I want to fix my title here a little bit. See if I can attract some 100 devs, folks. Cool. Thindle, how's your weekend been? Mine's been really busy. I got a whole bunch of stuff done around the workshop. Did a little bit more work with the laser engraver. Honest answer, of course. I'm always looking for an honest answer. Lie to me, Tyndall. Lie to me. I hope you're doing well. Either way. Mental health issue. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's tough dealing with that, especially like myself dealing with some mental health issues, feeling alone in that. But please know you're not alone. You've got community around you that care about your well-being and hope that you're doing well. So yeah, if you ever need to chat or even just want to vent to somebody, you can always DM me. I'm always happy to chat with folks, even if just to commiserate about things that are going on. I'm always happy to help out. So, um, expecting to lose my contract in the next few weeks because my productivity's been crap because of my head. I gotcha. Um, yeah, that's a tough one to deal with. Um, it's easy sometimes for us, I think, to see an amount of success and then just kind of kick back and rest and go, yeah, look what I did. Cool. Now I can just kind of coast for a little while and then I'll pick back up and then I'll coast for a while and then I'll pick back up and coast for a while. But it can be tough sometimes. If you end up in kind of a downward spiral, it can definitely be tricky to pull yourself out of. So I'm sorry that you're going through that, Tyndall. It's no fun for sure. um, there's no quick win when it comes to productivity though, um, because if you're already not in a good headspace, you can't just say, okay, I'm just gonna snap out of it and get a whole bunch of work done. It doesn't work that way. I've definitely been dealing with lack of productivity sometimes myself. I find for me, some of it comes down to the whole work from home thing. Like it's really easy to get distracted, when a laser engraver shows up or the 3D prints are not working out to oh, you know what, I'm going to get back to that blog post later. It's really easy to sort of procrastinate like that. And it's tricky to get out of. And so one of the things that I've tried doing in the mornings is going for a walk, take the dog for a walk, just walk around the neighborhood. And that's sort of my commute to the office now. And I kind of get myself in the headspace of this other stuff can wait. I don't have to do the 3D print stuff today. I don't currently do commission print work. I'm not doing anything with the laser engraver right now. I don't have to be doing 3D printing. So today all my 3D printers are off. I'm not printing a thing. I got the laser engraver sitting over here. I've got that other workbench where it's going to live. I've got it mostly cleared off. But I don't have to get to that today. That was kind of my weekend goal, was to clean up the workshop a little bit, but it's hard to just say you know what, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to write out a blog post today, because you're not always going to feel that burst of creativity. But I find that taking a walk around the neighborhood and kind of getting my head in the game can help, but it's tough. It's tough for sure. You do have an office. It's one of those office hotels. At least you get away from home. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, for me, because I work from home, it's really easy to get distracted with oh, I want to finish printing all this stuff, to hang the lights in the background. And now I got to hang the lights in the background. And there's always something to do. I would say if there are any opportunities for where you do go to work, if you have a coworker, not to not to completely open up to them and tell them everything that's going on in your life, but it might be helpful to say like, hey, can we like sit down and work on this thing together for a little while, like just for a little while, and see whether a coworker can sort of, walk through some things with you, talk about some stuff. Sometimes that can give a bit of a productivity boost to the work that you're doing. I get that you're a contractor and that might make things a little tricky, but um, just in my own experience, I find sometimes having that accountability can be really helpful. And if that accountability comes in the form of, hey, if you got a minute, can you sit down and like just, even just to tell them you want their perspective on something. Say, hey, can you take a look at this thing? You don't have to say I'm struggling with it. Like you don't have to open up to them, but just, pull a coworker or the company that you're doing this contract work for. Like grab one of the employees there that you've worked with that you can kind of trust, and just say like, hey, can you take a look at this? What do you think about this? What would you change about this? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And get their opinion on it. And sometimes that can be enough of that motivation of like, oh, I'm just going to go work on this thing. I have family who deal with ADHD, and one of the tricks they learned was, um, like to deal with procrastination. Instead of saying, I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to do this whole thing all day long, is to say, I'm going to fold half a basket of laundry. But once they get in the groove, they end up folding like every piece of laundry in the house. And so they kind of trick their brain a little bit into saying, I'm going to do it for a little while. And then suddenly the productivity takes off. The catch there is with family, having that accountability of saying, okay, it's time to stop, right? Like you've literally folded and refolded every piece of cloth in the house. Like it's time to knock it off. So that can be tricky. That's what I'm trying to do. Small tasks on a to-do list. Yep. Sometimes not. I get that. I totally get that. I mean, if you do exclamation point to do, you see my gigantic to-do list, and I haven't moved much on it lately because every time I turn around, there's something to do that's not on that to-do list. Although I need to start coming up with like video ideas for this laser engraver, because there's an expectation now for me to keep this laser engraver. I've got to do a bunch of these videos, and so I need to start adding some stuff on the to-do list. But I've already got like a few ideas for videos and short videos and things like that, around productivity with the laser engraver and so on. But the to-do list can be helpful, but what I find helps most for productivity is accountability and being accountable to someone else, because then I have to get done because they're expecting it. Where if it's just like your own to-do list, sometimes you can kind of put things off. But in your case, because it's a client, I would say, you have a responsibility to the client. I'm not going to tell you anything here you don't already know, but you have a responsibility to the client. But I think engaging them a little bit more could help with that productivity. And just say like, hey, I've got this to-do list. Can you just go over this list with me and just make sure I've got it prioritized properly? Like even something that small, and getting some fresh eyeballs on it, like having someone else look at it from their perspective could be beneficial, could be helpful. I'm not a mental health counselor at all. I can only tell you the little things that work for me, right? If I had a to-do list like that, having the accountability and having someone else take a look at it provides a little bit of vulnerability, but I think the accountability aspect of it is what helps me the most to kind of get out of that funk of, sitting down and like not feeling productive. I find adding some accountability or increasing the accountability that I have is a big help. Let me take a look at something going on here. Oh yeah, so my anonymous whisper thing doesn't work anymore. I need to go add a new. Um, How am I doing today? I'm doing pretty good. My hands got really wrecked yesterday between like chipping a bunch of ice down at the end of our driveway. Our house, like the front of our house faces north, and it's a two-story house, and so our driveway and the sidewalk at the end of our house doesn't get very much direct sunlight. And it's been cold and snowy. Like we got a bunch of snow last week. And it all kind of sits in the front of our house where the neighbor across the street, like even like as soon as it goes above freezing, all of their snow melts. And we've got like inches of snow. Well, we've got probably, I mean, in centimeters, we've got probably close to a meter of snow on our front lawn. Our neighbor across the street, no snow on their lawn at all. And down at the end of our driveway where it runs off and melts, we've got a good, you know, 15 to 20 centimeters of like just completely thick frozen ice. And then when it melts, it kind of like comes up on the sidewalk, and then at night that freezes. And it's my responsibility as a homeowner. I've got to get all the ice off the sidewalk. So I was out there yesterday trying to chip with a shovel, and I ended up getting tons of blisters on my hand. And then I went to the hardware store and I picked up a bunch of wood to like finish building shelves under the new workbenches. And so I got all kinds of slivers and stuff from that, and then trying to saw things and whatever. So my hands are pretty beat up, and I usually get really kind of frustrated and worried about that because I type for a living. I use my hands a lot, and so I have to be really careful about my hands that I don't like hurt my hands too badly. Thankfully, where I have the blisters and stuff, it doesn't like affect my typing or anything like that. But I always want to be really, really careful. I've only ever broken one bone in my body, and it was this bone right here at the end of my right ring finger. Just that bone right there. It snapped that bone like right in, like backwards in half. And my doctor said, well, we have to tape these two fingers together. Well, when you type for a living, you can't have these two fingers in a splint and still expect to type. And I said, well, can't I splint these two fingers together here? And they're like, well, no, because you broke this bone. It needs something against it, and this finger's not long enough. So we have to splint these fingers together so that this finger doesn't move. And so I tried getting one of those like little aluminum braces and like taping it up really, really hard, and it didn't really heal properly. That was 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And to this day, if I bang that finger, I still get like a bit of a tingle in there, like something doesn't feel right in that finger. But hurting your fingertips is horrible for sure. Yeah. So I'm like super careful anytime I'm like cooking in the kitchen and like chopping stuff up to get my fingers out of the way. Anytime I'm cooking in a pan and not burn my fingers. All the things you think about as a programmer, right? It makes me think of like singers that get insurance on their voice, right? If they lose their voice, that the insurance will cover part of their lost income if they can't do a show or something like that. It's like, should we as programmers get, any kind of extra insurance like that, that if something happens to our hands, that we can get covered for loss of income or things like that? You're clumsy sometimes. I mean, I can be clumsy too. But I'm really protective of my hands. Like my hands first and foremost, and then my eyes, because I have to be able to see for what I do. But like, I listen to really loud music because I don't really need my sense of hearing in my job. It helps, but I don't have to, have really good hearing in my job. But I need good eyesight, so I take really good care of my eyes, buy, monitors, set the resolution, ergonomics are set up properly. I, put my head against the pillow back here, and I'm exactly how I need to sit at my desk with the perfect height on my adjustable desk and my chair, so that I'm super comfortable. And I've never had like problems with my wrists or anything like that with typing. And so I'm really careful about that. I know other people that, they're slouched over all the time and working, and they end up with arthritis in their neck. And these are all things that affect us as programmers. Not my typical content that I typically talk about today, but hello to anybody wandering by that happens to come by the stream. I've seen the viewer count go up and down, up and down, up and down, just in the 20 minutes I've been streaming already. But hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for dropping by. If you've got questions about interview preparation, career help, job hunt for the week, anything like that, if you want a resume review, I'm totally open to helping people out today. I'm Ian Douglas. If you happen to be walking, wandering by and find the stream, I'm the author of this website, techinterview.guide. It's all free. All my advice is free. I don't do any ads. If you get like a pre-roll ad here on Twitch, I can't shut those off. But while you're watching the stream, I have 0 ads. So you don't have to worry about subscribing to my channel, but I do appreciate follows. I'm like 5 or 6 subscribers, I think. 6 subscribers away on YouTube from hitting 1,000. So if you want to help me out, if you want to go subscribe to my YouTube channel, again, all free content over there. There's no ads on any of my videos. I don't do any kind of advertising like during my videos and things like that. But I'm always happy to help people out. And so you can go check that out. If you want to throw me a subscribe over on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it. When we hit 1,000, I've got a giveaway planned. I don't have the thing here, but it's a little cool little treasure chest. If you want to go follow me on the socials, you can go find pictures of it on my Twitter feed. And when we hit 1,000 followers or 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I'm going to give away that treasure chest, and it's not going to be empty. And we're almost there. We're so close to getting there. If I can get there by Tuesday, I'm going to give it away Tuesday night. I'm not going to be streaming Thursday because I'm going to be out of town. So you kind of derailed it. I mean, it happens. I mean, we have to be really, really careful about like our health, but not just the physical health. Like I know I just talked a fair bit about just physical health and ergonomics and things like that, but you also need to take care of mental health, especially in programming, especially with the industry right now, with the job hunt being what it is. People are getting really frustrated about how hard it is to find a job and how hard it is to find the first job in tech. It's extremely hard, and it can really take a toll on your mental health, and I get that. So I don't downplay that whatsoever. In fact, when I first started streaming, some of the first streams that I did, and you can go find all those like full-length episodes on YouTube, is I actually had like a handful of streams where we had people come on and we just talked about mental health as a software developer. Like, how do we deal with toxicity? How do we deal with bad bosses? How do we deal with deadlines that are just impractical? Where the company sets a deadline, they don't ask you for input on the deadline. Like, those things all play like a pretty big role in our mental health. And so how do we take care of our mental health as programmers? Those are all just as important as taking care of our physical health. So, hey, Darth Gollum, thanks for dropping by. Thanks for the subscribe on YouTube. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying really hard to get to that 1,000 on YouTube. I have a feeling that if I would sit down and plan out a little bit more of my content and do YouTube shorts, that would really take off. I'm just not good at sort of coming up with a pre-recorded videos like that. But that's really what I need to do. I really need to get into doing short, like 1-minute videos. Unfortunately, a lot of what I try to cover as career advice doesn't play well as a 1-minute video. I've got lots of playlists on YouTube with like 5 and 10-minute videos, but to try to distill those down into like 1-minute videos is actually a lot trickier than you think. Been doing this professionally for 18 years. I still suffer from tons of imposter syndrome. Not sure if that's 100% normal, if it's my brain. I deal with it too, and I'm going on 27 years in the industry. It doesn't really go away. Unfortunately, I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it doesn't really go away. I think it's an inherent thing that we just have to. I think knowing it about ourselves is helpful, but imposter syndrome is a big thing. There's no easy way around it. There's no easy way to just say, I'm good enough. For me and my personality type, the intrinsic motivation of I think I'm good enough to do this job is kind of there. I find the extrinsic, like the external validation of, wow, that was a really good job, depends on my mood, like how well I receive that and how well I'm like, okay, clearly I did okay because someone else thought I did okay. But I think my own imposter syndrome sometimes people are like, wow, that talk was really good. Wow, that presentation was really good. Wow, that blog post was really good. I'm like, it could have been better. Right. And that's just something that I have in my mind all the time. It's like, could have been better. I could have done a little bit more work on it, but I'm also a workaholic and I'll put like way too many hours into like polishing and perfecting a talk. Like this talk I got to do in Detroit this week. I'm going through and I'm going over it and over it and over it and over it. And I'm like, by now I should be confident enough that like this talk is going to be good enough. And sometimes good enough is good enough. And that's a saying that I've heard, and I try to tell that to other people, and they're like, "Oh, that's really good advice," and I don't take my own advice on it. But that's really something that needs to happen. Um, I think it's actually really important um, to be able to tell ourselves that what we've done is good enough. For me, I think it came with a lot of perfectionism. Like I want things to be perfect. I don't want any hiccups. Like I want things like when I do them, I want them to be perfect. And that just feeds back into the imposter syndrome. If it's not absolutely perfect, then, then obviously I'm a failure kind of thing. Like it's so hard to deal with sometimes. Um, but yeah, there's no easy way around that I've found. Because it depends a little bit on whether you're internally motivated or externally motivated, and then what is that motivation, like what's going to help that motivation the most? Is it a pay raise? Is it a bonus? Is it just people giving you like public shout outs? Is it the lack of public shout outs? Like, I tend to be pretty humble, and I usually tell people like, hey, if you've got criticism about me, tell me in private. But if you've got like something really public that you want to share about, look what Ian did, come talk to me privately first, because I may not want the accolades. Like I'm not a spotlight, like put the spotlight on me and look at all the things I did. Like that's not me. That's not my personality. I know people that are. That's just not me. And so I usually tell people like, if you got something like really positive that you want to share with other people about something that I did, please talk to me first so that we can talk about like, don't go like way overboard and throw a giant party. Like just, talk about all the things. And by the way, Ian did this thing. Thank you for that, and whatever, and like move on to the next topic kind of thing. But I'm not really a big spotlight kind of person. But all that kind of feeds back into the mental health, especially with the imposter syndrome and perfectionism and things like that of like, am I really good enough to do this? Am I really good enough to, say this or be that or whatever? It's just, it's hard. It's tricky. Um, yeah. Um, let's see. I'm trying to get my anonymous whisper thing back up and running, and it's failing on this other computer. I'm not sure why that is. Why is that? No running event loop. Okay, let me go see how I need to run that thing. I need to run an asynchronous Python script, and there's like some special command line thing that you have to do, and I can't easily find it in my chat history right now. I think streaming code is helping. Okay, cool. Yeah. Darth Gollum says, appreciate your advice. Trying to apply some of it as I work with students who are creating resumes. Sweet. We'll have them come over. I'm always happy to chat with students. I think providing perspective, especially on resumes, is really important, and getting lots of opinions on what makes a good resume, especially in the tech industry. But a lot of the advice that I end up giving about resumes is applicable to people outside of the tech industry. Like as a hiring manager, whether I'm hiring for a restaurant job or a tech industry job or a sales job, I need to see in a hurry, is this resume even relevant to the job? Should I call this person? I need to find that in like 10 seconds or less. Otherwise, I'm moving on to the next resume. And so I think that advice applies no matter what kind of industry we're in. But I'm always happy to provide ideas and things like that to folks. So yeah, if you want to have them drop by the stream, I'm totally happy to chat and give perspectives and other ideas. Even if you're sharing my advice with them and they come by the stream and they hear the same thing, sometimes just hearing it from another person, they're like, oh, two people are saying this exact same advice. Maybe that's like legit advice I should take. It's usually when people hear conflicting advice that they're not sure which advice to follow, and then they end up following neither. Or they'll pick one and not the other or something. But I think with a lot of things in life, the more perspective we hear, the better we can form our own perspective on how we want to do something, whether it's writing a cover letter or how we write code. It's the whole like tabs versus spaces and Vim versus every other editor out there. It's like the more opinions you hear and the more experience and hands-on experience you have, the better you're going to form your own position and how you want to do things. And whether that's how you want to lay out a resume or how you want to write your code, that's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But yeah, have them drop by the stream, even if it's the same advice that they hear. Just sometimes hearing it, from a slightly different perspective or slightly different analogy or something like that, can sometimes help like get through to people. So I'm always happy to chat with folks about that stuff. Why can't I start up that other Discord thing? It's bugging me now. All right, so now I gotta go look up Python 3 Fast API. See how we go, like, build this thing. I want to say I need like GUnicorn or something to run the thing. Let's go look at. There it is. Oops. So I need to run UVcorn. Yep, there we go. Main app. All right, so that should have that up and running now. If someone can help me out and send a whisper to my chatbot, just to see if it shows up as an anonymous chat. Hey, X90, good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Haven't seen X in a little while. Hope things are going well. Hope you're having a great weekend so far. Yeah, if someone can go send a whisper over to the ID736 bot, I'm just curious if it's going to show up. Hey, anonymous question. There we go. All right, that worked. Great. For Ian only. I probably need to suppress that thread ID. So now these things are actually going to show up as threads in Discord as well. So yeah, thanks for sending those over. So if someone that did an anonymous question, if you can add a second question, what we should see on Discord, if you want to go check out our Discord community, got a button for that here somewhere, is over in the anonymous questions channel. We should see these comments coming in as anonymous questions, but if somebody posts another whisper, it should show up as a thread. So that way you can ask a question and ask or like add additional sort of follow-up content as well. So let's go check out Discord real quick. If I can find my Discord window, there it is. Go over to here. Yep, they're showing up in anonymous questions. There we are. So we have a hello and a hi as well. And the person that said hi added, here's a secret whisper I did. I'm 929. Cool. So those are showing up as a threaded conversation now on Discord. Sweet. So our Discord bot's back up and running. All right. One more thing I got to start up on a regular basis and make sure it keeps working. So cool. So that works. The other thing that I'm thinking of building is a message queue or like a question queue, so that if in the unlikely event we get like lots and lots of people in chat and people start asking a lot of questions, that we can make like an exclamation point queue and then they type in their question and it'll actually add it to a question queue that I'll have up here on the screen or something like that. So that way, people can ask a question and it shows up in that queue and I'll just answer them in the order that they come in. I think that kind of thing would be really helpful as well. If I get to a point, I mean, I've had like 30 to 50 people in the stream in the past. It's really dropped off in the last little while though, but that's fine. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to trying out different ways of like making sure that I can help people out, and just be highly available for folks to ask questions and feel that their questions being answered. I think that that'll be really helpful. So add that to the growing to-do list for myself. But cool. So our anonymous question asker thing is back up and running. So that's helpful. I still have to work on the clip thing. That's going to take like a whole re-engineering of how do I get my little clip thing working for like starting and stopping a clip and then having that extracted as a YouTube short. Not a short, but like a shorter YouTube video, like a 5-minute to 10-minute video. That one's going to be a little bit harder because the code is running on a different machine than my actual streaming PC. And so what I think I might have to do is actually share the streaming PC's location of where it stores the video as it's recording so that the other machine can see it, so that it can actually extract the video and like build the short on the fly. At the very least, we need to get the clip stored in the Airtable database so that I can like extract it after the stream if I need to. But I was trying to minimize how much work I have to do after a stream, where at the end of the stream, I just want like all these other little videos and I can just like drop those in YouTube and add the descriptions. I'm trying to find easy ways of automating that process for myself. So we'll get there. It'll take some time, but we'll get there. So yeah, so Wednesday I fly to Detroit. I'm going to be out in Detroit for several days. And then I fly back on Saturday. I'm going to be out there for a conference called Hacking with the Homies. And I'll be giving a talk for Postman where I work. And well, it's kind of like a talk / workshop. It's going to be more demo than conference talk. So yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of that for Ian only thread comment. I don't think I need that in there. Let's go take that out real quick. I was using it more as debugging, but I don't actually need that in here. But I do need to restart my bot. So let me go to chat, and that will reboot the bot. Will the talk be streamed? Yeah, so it will be live streamed. I don't know if the conference is free, but it's a hybrid conference. So I'll be giving the talk live. There'll probably be a handful of people there. They haven't said one way or the other like how big the attendance is going to be, but I'll be doing it live. They gave me the option of doing it remote, but I wanted to get out of the house for a couple of days. And Detroit's right near Canada, so I want to like drive into Canada. So the conference is Thursday, Friday, and I don't fly back until Saturday evening. So I'm going to spend Saturday in Canada and like do some shopping and like ship the stuff back to myself, and then get to the airport and fly home. That's the plan anyway, is to hopefully make it back across the border, find a FedEx place that I can like drop the stuff off and ship it back to myself, and then get to the airport and fly home. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't know if the conference is free though. Let me go see if I can find the link for it. My talk's like the very first one right after the keynote, so it's probably going to have pretty good attendance. So it's in person and virtual. There it is. Let me drop it in chat if anybody's interested in checking it out. click on get tickets. It's $60 if you want to do the virtual, and that'll also give you access to the uh, recorded sessions afterwards as well. So it's not bad, less than $100 US. A lot of conferences are in the many hundreds or thousands of dollars. So yeah, if you want to check it out. The talk I'm going to be giving is on like automating software testing using Postman and why it's important and things like that. So should be fun. It's a kind of a mishmash of talks that I've given in the past. So I'm taking like 5 minutes from this talk and 10 minutes from that talk, and like, you know, a little bit from this workshop and a little bit from that workshop. But they limit us to how many slides we can have, which is kind of interesting. So there's we're only allowed 3 slides, and then the rest is demo time. And so I have to be careful not to pack too much information into the slides, because then people spend time reading the slide and not listening to what you're actually saying. And so one of the things I learned in public speaking is have fewer words on the slide, so that it's kind of like the high level sort of bullet points, but you're not like writing it out word for word on the slide and then like reading the slide. That you just kind of put the high level bullet point, and then your explanation is like backing up what that bullet point is about, so that way people can take their own notes and things like that. So I have to go over the slides one more time. They need me to make a change to the slides, and then I'll get those resubmitted to them this week. And then I've got a little bit of code in a repository that I need to give them, that they're going to link from their repository as well, that'll have like a bunch of notes and links and stuff like that. If you can get the content of the talk from just a slide, you're doing the slide wrong. Exactly. I see so many slide decks where it's like packed with words, and it's the same thing with a resume. Honestly, you know, if I see a resume with lots of words on it, I'm like, I'm not reading this whole thing. Like I need, you know, a small amount of information to get the point across of like, is this, you know, what I need to see. One of the things I need to rearrange on my slides, because they're streaming it over StreamYard, is I tend to put something down in the bottom right corner of my slides, and that's going to be covered up with the StreamYard logo. So I need to move some stuff around on my slides a little bit. So easy said, hard to be done. That's right. We're struggling with that very topic at work. Analytics testing is a real time sink for us right now. Okay, interesting. Analytics testing. That can be tricky from like just a data generation point of view, like trying to generate data in order to even build the analytics in a random enough way that, you know, your test results aren't always the same, but that you can dynamically add, you know, certain events and whatever to make sure that your stuff is actually working the way that you expect. It's tricky. Yeah. Not exactly what my talk is going to be. My talk is more like, how do we automate testing in like CI/CD and doing that with Postman. So it's going to be like, it's going to start out with how do you make API calls? You know, that's something that people are most familiar with Postman. And then how can we add test software inside of Postman? And then how do you choose one of our 2 command line tools to then run the Postman tests in a CI/CD pipeline? I've got a problem for testing my extension where I need to generate a data structure that's entirely random. There are some really good tools out there for randomization, like Faker, Faker.js. And I think that's the underlying thing that's used in like Ruby on Rails has FactoryBot. It used to be called FactoryGirl. They changed to FactoryBot a couple of years back. And Python has their own version of FactoryBot, but I forget what they call theirs. But I'm pretty sure it's got factory in the name. And they pull in all these randomization libraries for like, I need a random first name. I need a random UUID. I need a random, you know, this or that. I need a random address. I need a random IP address. I need a random whatever. And you can pull these things into your software really, really easily by using these third-party randomization libraries. So depending on what you need to generate and how, I would look at something like a FactoryBot where you define the model and then it'll just like randomly fill in the stuff, even if it's just, you know, lorem ipsum, you know, Latin phrases or whatever. I need a random structure with random property names and random values. Oh wow, okay, that's harder then. Um, I mean, the random keys and values would be easy enough to generate, but the random structure of do I choose an array here? Do I choose an object here? That's definitely getting into trickier territory for sure. Let's see what else we got going on. I am 3 subscribers away on YouTube from hitting 1,000. So if you can hear my voice, if you're hanging out on the stream and you are not a subscriber on YouTube, please go subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really want to hit 1,000, and then we'll give away that treasure chest. So go check out my YouTube channel and go throw me a subscribe over there. Pretty please. So on the Discord community, there's an announcements channel, and the last note that I dropped in there are a bunch of giveaways that we're planning on doing. So the 1K subscriber on YouTube, when we get to 2,000 followers here on Twitch, I'm going to do a really big giveaway. Whenever we reach our $1,000 community goal for the fundraiser, and I match that, we're going to do a giveaway. The whole month of April is going to be giveaways. We're going to be doing like the typical like 3D printed kind of thing, and we'll be doing those as giveaways. And then March 14th is going to be a fun giveaway day. So I'm going to enable that little drop game with the parachutes, and I've already booked that day off of work, and they okayed it. So I'm going to take that afternoon off, and I'm going to stream on Pi Day. And if you can do the little parachute drop and land for 3.14, I'm going to buy you a Raspberry Pi. Like I'm going to buy you a top end Raspberry Pi. And I'm going to have all kinds of pies here. I'm probably going to have like bit redeems or donation redeems to get like a pie in the face. And we'll do several of those because those will be fun to watch. And I'll probably get my kids involved. They won't have the day off from school, but once they get home from school, I'll just queue up like how many pies I need in the face, and they'll just blast me with pies. I think it'll be fun. Dogs barking and howling at something out there. So that's going to be in March, and then April's going to be like our whole month-long giveaway thing that I've done in the past. We did it in May and October last year. We're going to do it the whole month of April. We're going to do the month of July, and we're going to do the month of October, where we do like a whole bunch of 3D printed giveaways, and we'll just have those kind of ongoing. Because those are fun to do. I like doing the month-long things. It gets a lot of engagement and stuff like that. Hey, Zooey, good to see you. My kids haven't really heard about that. I mean, one of them is probably eavesdropping a little bit because he's down here in the basement, but the other one hasn't heard about it. Hey, youngest, did you just hear what I said about Pi Day? He's not even paying attention to me. He's playing his video games. So, Zooey, good to see you in chat. How's your weekend going, Zooey? How's that job going? How's that work going? Also looking for other guest ideas for Sundays. So Sunday being kind of career prep day, I'm going to open up my calendar. Once I figure out more of my travel in Q2, I'm probably going to arrange to have a few guests on the stream. My trip to India got postponed, so it's not happening in the first week of March. We're going to do it sometime in Q2. A trip that I was going to do to San Jose mid-March got moved to December, but I am going to San Francisco for spring break with the kids and my wife. We're all going to go to San Francisco for several days. I am giving a talk out there, so that was like I was going either way. But the talk I'm giving is actually on my wife's birthday, and my manager reached out and they're like, "Can you come give a talk on the 21st of March?" And I'm like, "It's my wife's birthday." And they're like, "Well, bring her to San Francisco." I'm like, "But our kids." And they're like, "Well, bring the kids to San Francisco." I'm like, "Okay." So I need to find out from work like how much of the trip they're gonna cover, like cost wise, because flying us all out there and putting us all in a hotel is expensive, and it's more expensive than me speaking at a meetup. it can really justify it. But hopefully they'll give me like some of the expense back for the travel and stuff. But so I'll be out there in March for several days. So there'll be a Sunday in March that I won't be streaming, but I do want to start having some guests on the stream again. So I'm gonna figure that out over the summer, open up my schedule, and start getting some people lined up. I was going through Polywork to book all the guests that we had on the stream in 2022, and had really good success, like bringing a lot of really good people in and getting some really good perspectives from folks around the world. We had a lot of folks from India, a lot of folks from Europe, a lot of folks around America, and I want to keep that momentum going, especially for the representation of different groups of people, because that's something that's really near and dear to me, is the whole diversity in tech thing. So Thindle, so both of my boys, they don't know about it yet. I mean, they'll know once they get home from school. But I thought the youngest would have overheard me talk about it, but apparently not. So that's okay. Zooey says, work has been stressful due to my test environments going down, so I can't get my defect fixes tested. That's tricky. I'll have to pick your brain on how to suggest ways of making changes in that department. Yeah, I'm always happy to nerd out on testing. Reach out anytime. I'm happy to hop on a Zoom call and chat about that. I can actually justify that as like work time. So, but yeah, let's get to 1,000 folks on YouTube. That would be really, really awesome. If we can get to 1,000 before Tuesday, then I'll give away that treasure chest. Otherwise, it'll have to wait till I get back next Sunday. So yeah, so I travel Wednesday through Saturday. So I won't be streaming Thursday night, but Thursday night's just been maker night. I tried laser engraving like a photo of my wife holding the Riker when he was a puppy. It kind of worked. It actually shows up way better on camera than it does in person. In person, it's like really, really faint, but the contrast on the camera actually works out pretty good. But I also bought some larger, like 4x6 sheets of this 2mm wood, because I actually want to test like cutting it out, like cutting a shape out of it as well. And I'm thinking I'm going to do a mix of engraving and 3D printing as part of the giveaway in April. The other thing is, as I figure out stuff about the laser engraver, the stuff that I actually laser engrave and do cutouts and things like that, we'll be giving that stuff away as well. And so I've got a whole bunch of these 4x6. I've got like 100 of these 4x6 pieces of wood. I've got some pieces of acrylic that are about this big, and I want to try like etching into those and like putting an LED up kind of underneath the bottom to see if the etching will light up. I think that kind of thing could be really fun. And so now I've got ideas of like, can I 3D print something with a USB plug in it that will turn on an LED that you put this little acrylic card in the top and have it light up with some sort of saying. And can I 3D print all of that and like sell those things online? So I'm probably going to do some design work around that and design that thing and give those away. So, hey, RC, good to see you. Thanks for dropping by real quick. A DevRel friend of mine is really struggling to get to 1K subs on YouTube. She got a shout out from Nick, and bam, 1.3K. Yeah, like I said, doing the YouTube shorts would really help. I just need to like sit down and plan out like what do I want to do for these like 1-minute videos. Like I could probably do a series of 1-minute videos about tech resumes and like how to lay them out and why it's important and things like that, or the company research, or networking or something like that. So if anyone's got ideas on like what I could be doing for these 1-minute videos, I'd appreciate any input, because I'm really horrible at coming up with that kind of stuff. Let's see what else is going on. So if anybody has any other questions about tech stuff, interview stuff, or resume reviews, anything along those lines, feel free to drop that in chat. I don't think I've got any new resumes in. Nope, no new resumes in. But yeah, if folks want a resume review, let me know. I'm also trying to think of something to do with the space up here in OBS. I'm trying to think of like, getting some progress bars or some other stats or something like that on here. So Send you mine, but it's in Swedish. No, the main issue is it's too long. So I've actually been chatting with recruiters over in the UK as well. So I don't just do like American recruiting and stuff like that. I also chat with recruiters and hiring agencies in Europe as well. And even though Europe still holds to kind of the curriculum vitae, the CV format, which is a longer format, recruiters over there still don't want more than 2 pages. So having a really long CV is okay as a starting point. And so that's kind of the big format resume that I talk a lot about here on the stream. You still need to boil that down to like a page or two just to really get the point across of I am relevant for this job. Yes, you have a varied background, you've got 18 years of experience, but you can still bring that down to just 2 pages of this is the most relevant information that I know. And what I do on mine is I say, if you want a full work history and all my education, all my certificates, all that kind of stuff, go look at my LinkedIn. Like I literally write that on my resume, like for a full, work profile, like go look at my LinkedIn. And so that way my resume is just the most relevant information that they need to see. So they can make a determination really quickly, is Ian somebody that we should call? Once you're in the interview, then it's up to you, but you got to get your interview in the first place. And if your resume is gigantic and people are kind of skimming over it and they're having a hard time seeing the relevancy or quickly finding that relevancy, then it's harder to make a determination of should we call you or not. And so you have to be really upfront about, this is your job post, here are my skills, and just really line those things up as best you can. That's how you're going to show high relevancy. So whether it's an American resume or a European CV or anywhere in the world that uses either a resume or CV format, you have to show that relevancy really quickly. That's how you're going to get the interview. And then the rest is up to you to actually pass that interview. How can I send you a PDF? You can send it over to this link over here. It's a little form to fill out, and you can say whether you want a private or a public review. If you do a public review, I'll do it here on the stream. If you want a private one, then we'll chat offline about that. See you next time, Zooey. Good to see you. Have a great lunch. I'm going to be out in Detroit this week. Not quite out in your neck of the woods, but yeah, if I ever get up into your neighborhood, I'll let you know. So good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. So let's see, what else do I have going on today? So I got the shelves built underneath the workbenches. Now I need to probably go hit the store and buy like some containers and whatever that I can actually like fit underneath to like start organizing like bins of stuff. So I want to get like bins for like 3D printer parts for the 3D printers that I've got like right there. So that, if something breaks, I literally turn around, the parts are right there. I don't have to like walk around my basement and try to find all the parts I need. And all the tools and stuff like that, or the common tools that I use when I'm kind of down here in the workshop. And then the other workbench where I'm going to be putting the laser engraver, that's where I'm going to be doing a lot of the resin pouring and things like that. And so I need an area of the shelf that I can actually put the laser engraver down on that shelf to kind of get it like down and out of the way so I can work on resin. And then if I want to do engraving, I can put the resin stuff away on a different shelf and pull the laser engraver out. So the idea of having 2 shelves under these workbenches is that you can, I can say this, this whole shelf is just for the resin and the silicone. This whole shelf is just everything I need for the laser engraving. So all the, the little things that I would etch and things like that, like those are all going to go in a bin on a shelf with the laser engraver and all the other materials that I need for that. So the workbench thing that I used, let me show you this real quick. We talked a little bit about it on the stream on Thursday. But let me switch over to here and go over to here. So these are the workbench legs that I use, and it's this company called 2x4 Basics, and so you can buy just these legs, and so you can buy it as a kit of 5. I buy it as a kit of 4 legs, and then it comes with these other things on top that you can build shelves on top of them. But then you pick like whatever size of 2x4 that you want. So this is actually the the setup that I use the most. If it'll load, there it is. This is the setup that I use the most here at home. I don't do the fifth leg to make an L-shaped thing. I'm doing more this style right here. And so they just ship you like these 4 legs and then these posts or whatever. And then you basically just, you cut the lumber yourself for however big you want to make things. So if you have a desktop that's really, really deep, you just cut, this 2x4 on the side a little bit longer, and then however long you want to make the workbench, and then you just drop in a tabletop. And so I had all these 2x4s laid out, but I didn't actually have the shelf material to put on there. And so that's part of what I did yesterday. Well, I had to buy a couple more 2x4s, but I got all those cut, and then I actually assembled shelves underneath the workbench. I don't do the top shelves here because they kind of get in the way, and they take up a fair amount of like room this way, horizontally on the workbench. So I don't currently do. I used to do like one really tall shelf. I didn't do this middle one here, but I just did one really tall one, and I had like little bins sitting on top of it. And so all of these parts they're like actually sitting underneath this workbench here beside me. But I have 3 of these workbenches at home, and they're fantastic. One thing I don't like is this shelf in here is, it's not as tall as the shelf down here. I would have liked them to be the same height. So the shelf on the bottom is a little bit taller than the shelf on the top. And so now I've got to go like measure this and like go find bins that are exactly the right size that I need to like fit things in here. But it's really versatile, and I love that I can, lumber not included, go figure. But I love that I can make these workbenches whatever size I need. So like this workbench here is 90 something inches long by 26. The other one is 26 by 74. And this other one is like 31 by 65 or something like that. So you can, whatever size tabletop you want to drop in the top of it, you just cut the lumber to whatever size you're going to make the whole workbench. One thing that I should have done is do this like slide out mechanism thing to actually have a drawer that actually pulls out, especially for the bottom one. That would have been really, really handy. I didn't do that on mine, but the more I see it, the more I want to do that little shelf thing on there. So I digress. We're not supposed to be talking about maker stuff. So I got all those shelves done. So my typical Sunday is like go get groceries and do food prep for the day and stuff like that. So I'm not really in a hurry to get off the stream just yet, but we've been going for about an hour. If folks have questions about interview prep, anything like that, I'm more than happy to take questions and offer perspectives and things like that, kind of as we go. Trying to think of like what all happened in the industry this week besides layoffs. Trying to think of like happy things that happened. I did hear of one company. I want to say it was like an investment firm. They were kind of like bucking the trend, and they're like, we're not doing layoffs. We're going to hire like 4,000 new people. And so they actually made the news because they were like aggressively hiring developers and QA and sales and stuff like that. Yeah, Sendel, they're big layoffs going all across the board right now. Like, a lot of companies are laying people off, and it's really disappointing. But there's one company, I forget which one it was, but there's one, is it Fidelity or something like that? I forget now. But they actually made the news because they were like, no, we have like 4,000 open jobs, like come work for us kind of thing. Working for a financial company is very structured and very rigid. And I've heard from some people that the pace of working at a company like that is generally slower than working at like a typical kind of software company. But you would learn a ton about like data security and data privacy and things like that working at a financial company like that, if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in working at. So there are companies out there who are still hiring. And even the companies where you hear like, oh, they're laying off 5% of their staff or 10% of their staff, they're generally, like from what I'm reading and from what I know about these companies that are doing the layoffs, is they're laying off like teams for things that they were aggressively hiring for when the economy was really good and they had lots of money coming in. They're like, okay, well, let's start up all these initiatives. We're going to get these projects up and running. And now that the economy is slowing down a little bit, Now companies are starting to review, like, should we really be working on that? It's like, nah, maybe we don't need to actually work on that program after all. And so then they either try to find places for those other employees, or they say, like, sorry, we got to let you go. And I'm seeing that more and more. It's not just like we're downsizing for the sake of downsizing. It's like they're downsizing because they're trimming off all these programs and projects that were started up because of the aggressive hiring. That, companies had all these, really great plans, really great project ideas, and then realizing, like, wait, maybe we don't really need to be working on that after all. And so they're stopping those programs and they're stopping those things. And then, those people are out of a job. Um, I've actually heard of, like DevRel teams, being cut. Oh, that was the other big one that was huge is DigitalOcean cut their entire documentation team. So when you do a Google search for like most tech stack, like how do I get started in this or that technology stack, chances are really good one of the top 10 results on Google is a tutorial on DigitalOcean, because they had a whole team of people, and I actually applied to be a part of that team when I was doing my job hunt last year, to actually go in and write documentation on all these different tech stacks. Here's how you get started. Here's how you can deploy it on DigitalOcean. But it wasn't like, here's how to do this with DigitalOcean. It was, here's how you do this thing in this tech stack. And as a footnote at the bottom, if you want to deploy this on DigitalOcean, here's how you do it. But it wasn't centered around DigitalOcean. It was just centered around the technology. Well, they cut that entire documentation team, which is like, everyone's like, what the heck? Like, why would you do that? Like, that's one of like the key things that bring people into DigitalOcean are those documentation tutorials, and they cut that entire team. So stuff like that is really hard for sure. The tenure, some of the people getting laid off is also concerning. Yeah, and a lot of those are the people that are most expensive. Like, how do we save $500,000 a year? Well, we let go like 2 employees and we save ourselves $500,000 a year, because those people have been around for 20 years and they're making huge money. And are they really getting the economic benefit out of it? Or could they, lay off 2 or 3 people and hire 5 people for less money? Over time, though, with raises and so on, they're going to have to end up paying those other 5 people the same amount of money that they're paying the people that they just laid off, if those people stick around. And so it's just going to be this constant churn of, like, we bring them in at, these elevated salaries. They elevate even more with raises and tenure, and then we let them go. And so then we got to bring more people in at a lower salary, but then they, climb over time. And so it's almost a self-perpetuating, higher layoff sort of scenario, as opposed to doing it a little more sustainably. Not saying that companies shouldn't give raises or that tech jobs aren't worth the money that they are, but I mean, for the kinds of programming that are happening at FANG companies, do they need to be paying these people $300,000 a year? I mean, that's why people want to go work at FANG, because they pay like overinflated salaries. Where going and working at a startup, you're going to learn just as much. You're going to be just as engaged. You're going to be working on the exact same technologies that FANG companies are using or building. And you're going to feel more like an appreciated team member, as opposed to you're one of 60 or 70,000 other programmers. Not to say startups aren't doing layoffs, but you're going to feel more appreciated at a smaller company than a really gigantic company, but you're not going to get paid as much. And so, are you in it for the tech? Are you in it for the learning? Or are you in it for the paycheck? There's a balance of both, right? So it's not like one or the other. It's like, how much of each? Is it a 60-40 split? Is it a 50-50 split? Do you care more about the paycheck than the tech? Do you care more about the tech than the paycheck? Those can help drive your decisions about, what kind of company do I want to go apply for? Do I want to go work at a FANG company? Do I want to go work at a small startup? There are pros and cons, right? There are benefits and drawbacks to both. Whether it's salary, equity, all those kinds of things, they can definitely launch your career to get a job at a FANG company, but it's much harder to get a job at a FANG company. And they're not immune to layoffs either. But a lot of the people that are getting laid off from the FANG companies are the underperformers, where the layoffs that are happening at smaller, mid, large size companies that are not the FANG companies are tending, at least from what I'm reading over the last several weeks, are tending to be programs that are being cut, as opposed to we just need to get rid of underperformers and the people that are paid like enormous amounts of money. Like I want to say like some of the people that Google laid off had been there for, 10, 15, 20 years that were making $1 million a year, with salary and equity. They were making literally $1 million a year. That's fantastic money, but were they really doing anything differently than someone who was making like $200,000 a year? It's like, yeah, they've got more responsibility, they've got more domain knowledge, but at the end of the day, were they really doing something that was worth $1 million a year to the company? When a company hires you, some of the justification that they're making is they want to generally speaking, they want to make 2.5 to 3 times in revenue what they pay you in salary. So if they pay you $100,000 a year, they expect that what you produce is going to make them $250,000 to $300,000 worth of revenue. That's what most companies aim for. Not always, but that's usually what they're aiming for. But there are a lot of types of roles in a company that just cost the company money, like developer relations, like me. I cost the company more money than I generate in revenue. But there's a reason why companies hire for roles like mine, because it builds up that customer trust. Like Thendo was saying, like that's how you build trust. Like companies like DigitalOcean, building the documentation and things like that, doing videos, doing workshops, going to conferences. It gets our name out there. We already have 20 million users. Me going to this conference in Detroit, are we likely to get new signups from Postman because of that? No. But that video goes online, people see that you can do more with Postman than just hitting an API. You can actually do some testing. You can pull it into your CI/CD environment, and I'm going to demo like how to do that. That's going to get people more engaged in using the product more. Whether or not they have to upgrade to a paid plan, again, is not the prime reason that I'm going to give this talk at this conference. And so I'm costing the company money by traveling, giving this talk, flying home, staying at a hotel for a couple of nights. Like it's costing the company money. And so these are the considerations that we have to make as hiring managers of, is this person going to generate money for the company, or is this person costing us money? They hope that salespeople are going to bring in like 10 to 15 times their salary and bonuses and things like that, because they're the ones bringing in the big enterprise deals or the revenue generation. Software developers, the features that you build, how quickly you build them, how quickly they can roll those out and start charging customers for those features, you're generating revenue for the company. And so a lot of companies want to try to get 2 to 3 times your salary in revenue as far as productivity goes. Now, if you're doing contracting, then it wants to be even higher than that usually. But yeah, like Thendo was saying, with some talks, if it's more of an ad, then you lose interest. Yeah, exactly. Mention or tie in your employer. But yeah, it's more like, let me show you how to do this thing. By the way, you can use Postman for that. That's how we actually started as a team. We kind of shifted late last year. They rolled us under the product team as opposed to the marketing team. And so now it is a little bit more about, here's how to use Postman to do such and such. And I actually don't mind that, because really when you think about the return on investment, there is a need to generate revenue for what we do as a company. Like, yes, there is trust. You can't pay bills with trust. Like, you got to have some amount of income coming in. But then we're also doing other things about like, which team should focus more on the enterprise features and the enterprise customers as opposed to just dealing with typical developers. So the team that I'm on, we're putting more of the focus on just the end developer, not necessarily an enterprise level discussion or an enterprise level type of feature set or anything like that. So we're putting less emphasis on the enterprise and the paid, features of using Postman. But that's how companies are really determining the revenue expectation based on your salary. Startups can sometimes be even more aggressive than that. They're hoping that they can pay you a little bit less, still make 3 to 5 times your salary in revenue, because they're trying to kick things off, and then they're paying you aside from typically a lower salary, with equity that they hope, as the company grows and they start, kind of increasing as a company, that they can make that equity worth your while. But if you kind of come in too early in the company, it can take a long time for that equity to be worth anything. So generally what I tell people is if it's a seed stage, like you're probably not going to get anything out of them for a decade to 15 years because it takes a long time to take a company public. If they're more like Series B, Series C, they're probably more like 5 years away from being public. If they're Series D, they're probably thinking pretty seriously about going public, like sometime really soon. Not always the case. Some companies aim for an acquisition to kind of get that payout, but there's also no guarantee that if you get equity or things like that, that you're actually going to get anything from the company at all. I worked at one company that got acquired and we all had equity. And as part of the deal that they made, they basically called in all hands and they're like, all right, nobody has any equity anymore. But to make up for it, we're going to do a profit split on the sale of the company, that for every year you've been here, we're going to give you a month of salary. Which for a lot of people that have been sitting around waiting for their equity to be worth something. So people that had vested, or the people that had exercised their options and actually paid into it, they got extra money out of that. But for those of us that just had equity, that we hadn't actually invested our money in buying that equity, they gave us a month of salary for every year we had been there. Because really that was actually worth more money in my pocket at the time than waiting around for that company to actually go public. But I've also heard of other companies that they do an acquisition and all the founders get paid and their initial investors get paid and then the employees get nothing. Sometimes they kind of spin it to the employee of like, yeah, but now you're an employee of this even bigger firm and you get the prestige of that and whatever. But that doesn't always work out so well for employees. And so I think it's unfortunate that there's no guarantee that when you go to a startup that you're going to get anything out of that equity. Or that even if, they have an exit event like an acquisition or something like that, that they don't have to give the employees anything. That's disappointing when you see companies doing that. That also really erodes like the brand and the trust of like, yay, they got acquired, but they treated their employees like garbage in the process. Do you remember the 3D Studio Max method of dealing with piracy? No, I don't. Anything you spend to make the product more sticky is by and large worth it. I agree, X. Yeah, for sure. Regarding DevRel and relations. No, I don't remember what happened with 3D Studio Max. I know Autodesk has been like really, really sticky on piracy and stuff like that over the years. I mean, I used Autodesk all the way back in my senior year of high school. We were doing like AutoCAD and stuff like that. And then in college, we were using another Autodesk program. I don't remember the name of it. It was basically CAD for building circuits, where you could say, I've got this kind of chip and I've got this kind of chip, and you would literally just draw the leads and then it would try to organize, like, this is where you need to place things. Or you could like go in and manually place it and like set up all the layers of your circuit boards and stuff like that. I started in electrical engineering, so we were using some kind of Autodesk software for that. They didn't care about privacy if you did it. It was actually good for them because people learned 3DS at home doing fun stuff. Yeah. And then when they started working as modelers, they already knew 3DS. Yeah. If the company pirated it, it would send all the lawyers. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it. Like I remember like way back in the 90s, the whole thing about shareware, right? Is you try a product out. If you like it, you share it with other people. And if you really like it, then you can pay for a license or whatever. And I really appreciate companies that give you an amount of free use of the software before making a purchase decision. Like the engraver software for the laser engraver that we started on Thursday uses a software called Lightburn. And the company that makes the laser engraver will give you a license. If you buy their engraver, they'll give you a license for the software. But if you don't pay for the license, they give you like full unlocked access to everything about the software for 30 days. But even when I load it up, there's a little prompt of like, this is good for 30 days. There's like an extend the free period button on there that you can actually request more than 30 days of use. And they've got things on the dialogue that kind of like tug at your guilt a little bit. It's like, hey, we really need to make money as a company. So please support us kind of thing. And the license isn't that expensive. It's like $60 or something like that. So I'll probably end up picking up a license, but I'm hoping the company will actually give me a license. But if not, I'm going to buy the license myself. If I get to keep this thing, I might as well have some software. I'm a big believer in supporting the tools that I use. Like I pay for GitHub. I don't have to. I pay for, the Google Copilot thing, even though I don't use it a ton because, I believe in some of the things that it can do to kind of spark that creativity. I don't agree with using Copilot in a production environment, but I do appreciate it for helping solve trickier problems and for just coming up with creative ways of doing something, but using that as inspiration and not just copying and pasting the code. But yeah, I pay for the tools that I use. Editors, like I bought a license for Sublime Text back in the day, mostly because I got annoyed by having to click the little thing that would pop up every half hour going, please register your software or whatever. You just click OK and you could just keep using it. So they built a relation with the people and then they earned on the companies. Yeah. I mean, it's a good way of doing it. And there are a lot of other things too. Like even Postman has like a free plan. Even the lowest cost plan is only $10 a month, and it's really just giving you more use of the software. And so if you're just a private individual and you don't want to pay for Postman, you don't have to pay for Postman. But if you start hitting those limits, then you got to start paying for it. I don't mind that kind of model because if I am using it that much, then it's worth supporting. It's worth putting the money in and supporting that thing. As long as that company is innovating and doing things and it's not just, we did this thing 10 years ago and we're still selling the same software for the same amount of money every month, then, other people are going to kind of surpass them. But I think if the company is innovating and inventing things and whatever, or like reimagining things and they're showing benefit, then it's worth paying for those kinds of things. And so, yeah, I mean, I used to pay for Sublime and then I stopped using Sublime. I moved on to whatever came after Sublime Text, and then I moved over to VS Code. Now I already pay for GitHub, so I don't feel the need to invest money in VS Code. I do pay for Copilot, again, for the inspiration side of it. I think it's helpful. What other tools do I pay for? I used to pay for a JetBrains license. They have like an all-in-one toolbox kind of license where you pay like, I think it was like $200 a year or something like that, and you get all of their IDEs. And it was fantastic when I did a lot of development. Right now, I'm primarily just building Python code. I'll occasionally do a little bit in Ruby. I'll occasionally do a little bit of C#, but I can do all those in VS Code right now for what I need. But when you're learning a new language, I find having a really good debugger is extremely helpful for like stepping through your code. And so if I were going to really get into C# development, which I've been toying with and kind of tinkering with on the side, if I wanted to really go down that rabbit hole and really learn C#, I would probably go pick up another JetBrains license because their step-through debuggers are probably some of the best that I've seen, that I've used in the industry. Like I really like JetBrains. I can't justify the $200 a year anymore because I don't do full-time development anymore. But when I was doing full-time development, I mean, even for 2 or 3 years after doing full-time development, I was still paying for the JetBrains license. So I'm a big believer in like support the tools that you use. Yes, GitHub gives you a lot of stuff for free now. They used to not do it. Like they used to not give you private repos. You had to pay like $4 a month or something like that to get private repos. And so I started paying for GitHub back then because I wanted private repositories. And I actually started moving some of my stuff over to Bitbucket because Bitbucket gave you free, unlimited private repos, where I think GitHub gave you one private repo. And then GitHub started losing money to Bitbucket. And so GitHub said, okay, well, we'll let you have unlimited private repos as well. And then people are like, oh my gosh, GitHub's amazing. And then GitHub kind of took off. I mean, it had already been taking off at that point, but it got even more popular because people weren't having to use two services. I don't like Bitbucket's implementation. Their UI is a little clunky, um, but I still have code over on Bitbucket, that I've never moved over to GitHub. So every company's a little different, but once GitHub started doing that kind of thing, I'm like, okay, I'm going to support GitHub, and so I pay for the tools that I use. So I don't have a problem paying for licenses on software and stuff like that if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, then that's your own moral dilemma of pirating software, whatever. But Copilot is great for simple stuff and testing. Yep. It's great for a proof of concept. I agree. And that's the only thing I use it for. Like I would never use code generated from Google Copilot in a production system. I think it's more of a liability to a company because you don't know where that code's coming from, and you don't know whether that code was built with a software license that's compatible with the software license that you're trying to use as a company, or if you even put a license on your code as a company. And I think that those kinds of things are very dangerous to meddle in. And so for me personally, I will never use Google Copilot for production level code. And I think it's dangerous from your perspective as a developer to do that. I like the tool. I like AI, like trying to chip in and offer ideas. And it's like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have thought to do it that way. That makes sense. I'm going to use that as inspiration though. And so I'll have like a Scratchpad kind of version of VS Code kind of open on this other monitor, but this monitor where I'm working, this is where I'm actually writing my code. And this one over here, I'll activate Copilot, and then I'll like put in prompts and whatever and see what it generates. And then I'll actually hand write my own code based on the inspiration of what I see on the other window. But I'm never just going to like bulk copy paste. I mean, that's super dangerous. I mean, one of the funniest things I remember was back in the day, back when I was a kid, PHP version 3, 4, and 5. For the longest time, if you wanted to know how to get PHP to write code into a MySQL database, so PHP and MySQL, those were the technologies that you use together. If you use PHP, you're using MySQL. If you're doing web development with MySQL, you're probably doing PHP. This was like a long time ago. This is like 10, 15 plus years ago. But in their documentation, how they would tell you, here's how you do inserts and updates into MySQL, they would give you a block of code, and people were just copying and pasting that into their code and then just modifying their queries. But the way they wrote the code opened you up to SQL injection attacks. And they left that there for years. And people just copying and pasting this code. I was guilty of it too. I copied and pasted that code. And then doing security audits, you're like, oh, wait, if somebody sends in a form like this or that, it's actually going to run that as SQL. And so the way that they wrote their documentation on here's how to get PHP to talk to MySQL to do an insert or do an update or do a delete or whatever was like wide open for SQL injection attacks. And it was out there for years before they finally patched the documentation, and they got into using like binding parameters and things that would actually scan, for data types and protect you from yourself. But probably for a good 5 or 6 years, at least, that documentation had SQL injection possibilities. So like that was like one of my favorites to share over the years. But like, having people audit your documentation is definitely important for sure. GitHub having more free features is Microsoft DevRel. Yeah, I agree. Like it's actually been really interesting to watch the shift in Microsoft's strategy and how people feel about Microsoft. Then like 15, 20 years ago, everybody hated Microsoft. Nobody wanted to do anything in Windows. Microsoft was all closed source, and like they didn't want to give anything away. And it was, it was just this constant thing. But over the last decade, has it been a decade? It started about a decade ago. Microsoft really started like kind of toying with the idea of like, hey, we should do more open source. And they started really building a lot more open source kind of tooling and a lot of open source ways of doing things. They made the whole .NET platform open source. And that just opened things up for a lot of freedom for developers that wanted to work in this ecosystem that wasn't all closed source and very proprietary. And over the last 5 years, especially, has it been 5 years now that Microsoft bought GitHub? Not just with GitHub, but just their overall approach as a company. They're a lot more open now than they were like 10, 15, 20 years ago. And now they're not as hated as they were. And it's been really neat to see. Like, I actually really like using a lot of Microsoft products. I'm in Windows like 99% of the time now. Doing the whole like what do they call it? The like the virtual Linux kind of environment, the desktop or the Windows subsystem for Linux, building that into Windows. It used to be this whole add-on thing that you had to do, and it was really kludgy. And now it's like tied into the Windows kernel of like, no, you can totally like, do a virtual Linux environment. And you reserve a little bit of CPU and a little bit of RAM, and it's gonna like give you a dedicated Linux server right inside your Windows system that can communicate, and you can run all your software. And I did that on my stream for going on 2 years. I mean, I just like over the last, 2 months, moved my chatbot over to a dedicated Linux machine here at home. But until then, like anytime you were here in chat interacting with my chatbot or anything like that, it was all running in a Windows subsystem for Linux on my Windows machine as I'm streaming OBS. So I love that they've made that available. That kind of stuff has been really fantastic. And yeah, you can do Docker containers and things like that on other platforms like Mac and so on. You could totally have done all of this stuff in Docker. But I like having just a native, like I can open up a terminal and I'm right in Linux, and I can do everything in Ubuntu or FreeBSD or like whatever flavor of Unix or Linux variant. You want to come say hi to everybody? Come say hi to everybody. Come say hi. Hello. Oh, hi. Hello. Hello. Oh, hi. Oh, hello, Snuggle Pup. Hello. You being a good boy? You being a good boy? Hi. What's going on? Being a good pup? Yeah. High five? High five? Okay, high five. Thank you. He's just begging for cookies, that's all. Everybody in chat says hello. Come over here and get a cookie. Yeah, you want. Yeah, you want. No, you got it? All right. That's Riker, for those that don't know. It's not even reserved. Well, I think the RAM is reserved because you can go in and you can pre-allocate a certain amount of memory for your Windows subsystem. I don't know that the CPU is reserved anymore, but like, back in the day we used to use like VMware and tools like VMware. I forget what the other it was like another open source version of VMware. Man, I used to use all this stuff and I don't remember what it's called anymore. VirtualBox, yes, thank you. So like using those tools, that would actually dedicate RAM and CPU and disk and all this stuff. And now it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, you have this virtual disk and virtual CPU and whatever. And you can actually go into Windows subsystem and you can say, I want my Windows subsystem to only have like access to a certain number of cores. Otherwise, it shares everything on your machine. But I think the RAM, you can still limit the RAM, or it'll only use a certain amount of RAM because it has to allow Windows to run. But I really like the steps that the company has taken for that kind of stuff. It's been really helpful as a developer to then be able to just stay in one environment and get all my work done. I can run everything that I need. Yes, I still have a Mac laptop from work, and I still switch over to the Mac, and I'll bring that up on the screen instead. But I was also using like a capture device for the longest time too, and I would have the Mac running, and I would just bring that up in its own capture window using a capture card. Well, it's like the little Elgato HD60X, so it's like a 4K capture thing. And my keyboard is a wireless keyboard, but like I've got buttons over here that I can assign 3 different devices right here. So I got like Windows, Mac, and Linux. So whichever system I'm actually working on, I just hit a button on my keyboard and now I'm typing in on there instead. And so if I bring up my Mac in a virtual, in the capture environment, I can just hit a button on my keyboard, and when I type, I'm actually typing on the Mac, and it'll show up over there. And then when I switch back to Windows, I hit another button, and now my keyboard links over to Windows, and I'm typing in Windows instead. The only thing I wish that I could do is actually switch my mouse over to that. So I have yet to find a mouse that is comfortable, that has all the buttons that I need, that will allow me to hit a button to switch back and forth between PC and Mac. And so I've got, when I bring the Mac out and hook all that stuff up, I've actually got a trackpad that I use for the Mac, and I put that on the left side of my keyboard. And then I've got the mouse on the right side of my keyboard. So it's interesting to think about like how you do development and how you feel productive and stuff like that. So good times. I'm trying to find something to set the available memory. I can't find anything. I think it's 100% shared. Well, if I go into my Linux thing and I do free-m, I've only got 16 gigs of RAM allocated in my thing, and I've got like 64 gigs of RAM on my Windows machine. So there is a way to do it. I forget how I've done it. I want to say in your home folder on Windows, there's like a config file that you can set for Windows Subsystem. And you can set those kinds of things in there. So if I go to Mount C users, wait, I don't have a mount folder? Oh, nothing's mounted in here. That's weird. Why isn't that mounted by default? Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong machine. Okay, Mount C users, Ian. What's it called? WSL config. So it's a dot file, so .wsl config. And in there, so let me see if I can share that screen. Let's go over here. And can I pull up my Ubuntu window? So you can set this WSL config in your home folder, and this is where you can set how much memory you want to allocate. So even though I say allocate 48 gigabytes of memory, because I was doing some stuff with my son, his science fair project was like, let's go see what we can find in 10 billion digits of pi. But if I do a free-m, it says only, oh, now it says 48. A minute ago it only said, oh, because I was on my other machine. So this is where you can actually limit this. You can always go in, you can add more swap, but you can actually go into Windows Subsystem and you can actually reserve that. So you just make a dot file called WSL config, and you just set a memory allocation in here. I use a USB switcher for my keyboard, mouse, USB audio. I mean, I've had lots of those switch boxes as well. I had one, it didn't work particularly well, and having to like reach over and hit that to like swap everything over was kind of annoying, especially for the audio. Because like I'll get like Spotify running on Windows, and I just want that to play all the time. But if I switch over to my Mac, then I lose my background audio and things like that. So I've been trying to find ways around that. So having the capture card actually works out really well for me. The 4K capture card works really, really well. And then so last November, I actually bought a 4K TV for me to use in front of me here. And it's an LG C2, and it's really fantastic. Other than it does like some auto dimming thing, which is kind of annoying. But it's a 4K 42-inch TV, and it sits like as far back on my desk as I can set it without it like falling over. And I also tend to sit a little bit farther away from the desk because it's big. You know, it takes up like a good chunk of my field of vision, but it fills my vision now as opposed to having like multiple like really wide screens going this way, because otherwise I was cranking my head like this because I had so many screens. I had two like were they 30-inch or 32-inch widescreen monitors side by side, and then I had a third one that I actually mounted vertically, and I kept the vertical one. It's over here on this side of my machine. But having the 3 screens set up, I was literally like turning my head about 160 degrees to get my work done, and I actually started having some pain in my neck. And like I said earlier in the stream, like I care a lot about my ergonomics. So now I've got one screen in front of me. I can see everything that I need to do. And the nice thing about this TV is it has built-in AirPlay. And so if I am on the Mac and I want to shut down my Windows PC and I don't want to use Windows and I want to like really focus on work stuff, then I'll switch over to the Mac, and on the TV, as soon as I turn on the Mac, it's like, hey, AirPlay, do you want to use AirPlay? I'm like, yeah, I want to use AirPlay. I type in a code, and then I'm on my Mac. And that's all I see is just on the TV is just my Mac interface, and it's a single screen at that point. So it's beneficial. I basically did like some online surveys where they give you gift cards and things like that. And so I was just constantly getting Amazon gift cards. And then I went into Amazon and I used the Amazon gift cards to pay for Best Buy gift cards, took those over to Best Buy and bought the TV, because Best Buy's warranty is better than the Amazon warranty if you buy the extended warranty. The C2 is an OLED screen, and so it can be subject to burn-in. And the Best Buy warranty will cover you for burn-in, where the Amazon warranty will not. And so if you buy it on Amazon, it can be a little bit cheaper, and the warranty is a little bit cheaper, but you don't get covered for burn-in. So if you want the burn-in warranty, you have to go buy it at Best Buy. And so I used my Amazon gift cards to buy Best Buy gift cards. Then I went to Best Buy and I bought it. And I drove over, they had it in stock. I bought it and I brought it home and set it up, as opposed to ordering it on Amazon and waiting several days and hope you don't get a defective product and, or one that's cracked or something like that in shipping. And so for me, it worked out. It was a lot more beneficial for them. Cedar Craft, thanks for dropping by. Hello, good to see you in chat. Hope your Sunday is going well. So Thursday we were playing a lot with this laser engraver, and one of the first short videos that I started like filming little clips, I got to figure out how to like put it all together. We were trying to orient like, where does the laser start and how do I like figure out where to put the thing. Eventually I found like an old piece of my desk and I put that underneath, and I literally engraved a grid inside of it, like on this black material itself. So I put some really heavy scratches into it for where I need to line up the laser engraver. And now I've got like a grid engraved into this of like where things are going to get laid out. And then I actually ordered like a proper sort of thing that you put underneath the laser engraver. So if you're doing cutting, it's not going to like cut down into your material. But one of the things that I figured out is, well, this thing's a laser and I've got 3D printers. So is there something that I could 3D print that will help me figure out where the laser is actually like pointing? And so Lightburn has this cool little frame thing where it'll like spin around. You can actually activate the laser when you do that frame. You hold down the shift key. Well, you have to activate a setting. You hold down the shift key, and then while it's doing the framing, it'll actually show the laser on there. So you put the glasses on, you can kind of see where things are, but then you still got to get in there and like figure out exactly where to put things. So until I got this desktop piece put down and put the engraving in there, I figured out a really cool workaround. So let me show you this. I'm going to turn this light off for a sec. So I have a 3D printer, and I've got glow-in-the-dark filament. And so as the laser would go around and trace itself around, it would leave me with, it kind of fades out in a hurry on the camera, but I could actually 3D print just a super thin sheet of glow-in-the-dark filament, and then the laser pointer just draws on that, and then I knew exactly where to put that part down. And it worked out great. So then all I had to do was, when I was doing the framing, I just hold the shift button down, I hit the frame button, and I would just watch it draw the little outline with the laser. And then I would move that gantry out of the way, and I knew exactly, like you've only got like 5 seconds before the light would turn off, depending on how strong you make the laser. but I would do like 5% to 10% power. And so it wasn't hurting the plastic of the PLA. So it wasn't burning the PLA at all, but it was enough light for the glow in the dark filament to absorb to actually draw a little square. And then I knew exactly where to put this thing down to where I got like almost exactly to the edge. Like you can kind of see like I missed a little bit up here on the top, but other than that, it's like an edge to edge photo that I was trying to etch on this piece of wood. I missed a little tiny bit here on the top of like how I was actually laying it down. But you dial in that laser for the size of the laser. And again, depending on the resolution of your printer and how well you print this sheet, and you can actually see like how this actually printed on my print bed. I actually had like some stuff that had printed on there before. It's a little bit messy because of some glue that I had on my print bed and things like that. So it's not a perfect sort of scenario, but it made it really easy for me to figure out, okay, until I can actually get a proper grid underneath this laser engraver, let's put down this glow in the dark, we'll draw that box, and now I know, within a few millimeters of accuracy where to put that thing down. So that was fun to figure that out. What's really nice with Lightburn, what I do online, is have an overhead camera. And then in Lightburn, you can actually have a picture of your bed, so you can place your parts on the part once it's already on the build plate. Oh, on mine, not online. Yeah. So that works out well if you've done laser engraving enough that you kind of know your machine and you know where zero is and you can kind of put that stuff down. But either way, you need some kind of guide. And I just bought like a proper guide for like cutting things as well. That's like all metal and aluminum and whatever to like make really crisp cut lines and things like that. And it's also got like inches and millimeter markings on the rulers on there, so you can like put the thing down. You kind of bring it down, and it's got like a bit of a lip on there, so as you bring stuff down, it sort of like puts it down in place and it'll stay there, kind of thing. So I ended up buying one of those. So once I move all this stuff over to that other workbench, I'll get all that stuff lined up and whatever. But yeah, just trying to figure out like, how do I lay this stuff down? So even once I move that over there and I have that other guide, I need to figure out how do I mark on this piece of black board that I've got this thing sitting on right now? How do I mark on there where that guide is supposed to sit, so that the 00 on that guide is actually the 00 of my laser pointer or the laser engraver, and making sure that that's all lined up properly and whatever. So it's interesting to learn that kind of stuff, but that's more for my Thursday streams. My Sunday stream is more career stuff, but we were kind of tying this all into like support the tools that you use and so on. So I'll probably end up buying a license for Lightburn. What I get for free for 30 days has been pretty interesting to kind of go through. It's not super user friendly. It's not as friendly as like most slicer software for 3D printers, but yeah, I'm a big fan in supporting the tools that I use. I've paid for a lot of tools over the years. I pay for GitHub, and I don't really need to, but I choose to. I won't pay for Twitter, even though I use Twitter a lot. I won't pay for Twitter. So there are moral reasons when I will and will not pay for the tools I use, but for the most part, like any software tool that I'm using, to get my work done, I'm going to pay for. Like I'm going to invest in my home network. I'm going to invest in my computers. I'm going to invest in, the stuff that I use on a regular basis. Same reason that you hear the advice, like invest in a good bed and invest in good shoes, like whatever gets you off the ground. Invest in a good chair, invest in good shoes, invest in a good bed, couch. Yeah, if you want to invest in that, but like invest in the things that are going to help you as a human. So for me, as a software developer, I invest in a lot of tools, a lot of ergonomics, a lot of, how can I lay things out, and, invest in a good TV that's better for my eyesight than having all these screens, and better for my neck, so I don't have to go to the chiropractor as often, to get neck adjustments and things like that. Like my neck's still a little tight. I could probably, go a little more frequently than I have been in the last 6 months, but just doing what's right for you and your body, and then kind of going all the way back to, what Cinda was saying at the very beginning of the stream, dealing with mental health. Like a lot of these things can all factor into your mental health. How comfortable are you? Like it's always freezing down here in the basement, and that affects my mental health sometimes. It's like, oh, it's cold here again. I could turn on the heater, but then I'm paying like an extra $50 a month for electricity just to run a little heater down here. It's like I could just buy some insulation and like insulate my ceiling and, or have a contractor come over and like finish the actual basement, put in a proper floor, and then it wouldn't be quite so cold down here all the time. But that's a much bigger investment that, you know, um, but that kind of stuff can weigh on your mental health. And so your mental health and your physical health are definitely really linked. And so that all kind of circled around to my Sunday streams are about interviewing, and I want to have more people on the stream as guests to be able to talk about not just topics like mental health, but within the tech industry, but also just to get other perspectives and viewpoints on what it's like to work in tech, how other people started their journey in tech, how they got promotions or how they negotiated or whatever. And so I'm going to be opening up my calendar once I get a better idea of what my Q2 travel is going to be over the summer. I'd like to get more guests on the stream on Sundays, specifically to talk about career prep and interview prep and stuff like that. Dealing with root cause is important for sure, especially when it comes to health. Absolutely. It's vital, because without your health, what do you have? Like if I did like a ton of construction and I was banging up my hands and my fingers all the time, it would start to affect how I type and how I do the work that I do. Trying to stay healthy so that my voice is in good shape for this conference that I gotta give. Like my wife's fighting a bad cold right now. It's like, I don't want to catch that cold. I gotta go give a talk in a couple of days. Like, so do I isolate myself? Do I ask my wife to isolate herself? It's definitely an interesting kind of dynamic that we have to play as far as like staying healthy and things like that. And then, when I travel, I take rapid tests with me for COVID, and I rapid test when I get home for several more days, just to be careful that, I didn't pick up COVID or I'm not bringing COVID, things like that. So I'll do rapid tests before I fly, and then go from there. Like, it's that kind of stuff is important to me. Not just for my own health, but for the health of others, making sure that they're all doing what I can to play my part. So good times. So we've been going almost 2 hours. So I'll probably start to wrap up unless anybody's got career questions or if anybody wants to drop a resume. I think someone was going to send over a resume. Did I get nope, didn't get a resume yet. Yeah, let's go see who else is hanging out on Twitch. See if we can find a candidate for a raid here in a little bit. Not going to raid out just yet, but eventually. See who's hanging out on live. Not many folks streaming today, actually. It's a pretty quiet day today. So typically on Thursdays, I'll raid over to like another maker. On Sundays, I tend to raid over to like people doing software. So we'll keep an eye out for anybody doing software, anything like that, kind of as we go. No career related. Excited to see the Postman VS Code extension. Yeah, for sure. So I've been tinkering with it. It's because we get internal access to builds and things like that, and it's actually really neat. My worry about it, off the record, as I live stream about it, they're making it look a lot like the actual Postman product, and it would be nice if it was a simpler version of the interface, where it was doing more of just the testing side of it and not the full-blown interface, because trying to replicate that full-blown interface in VS Code to me doesn't look nice. But this is all product feedback that we need to get from users. So if our users start saying like, hey, this UI is actually really complicated to use in VS Code, is there a way to get a simpler interface? I think that would go a long way with the company as far as like what to build and why. So let's see who is streaming online. Got some people doing text to speech and Linux work, ChatGPT APIs. I'm all about the APIs. Someone else doing some UI, UX kind of stuff. That looks pretty good, actually. Yeah, well, I'm hoping to replace Thunder Client with it. Yeah, I mean it'll more than replace Thunder Client for sure. Um, I would really like to be a simpler interface than what the full Postman UI is, but something that's a little more complex than what Thunder Client does. That's where I think would be the sweet spot of like allow an easier way of like pulling in the features and so on without being like a full blown like Postman client inside of VS Code, because then you're not really saving anything. Like you're not really benefiting anybody, as opposed to like just hitting Alt Tab and going over to Postman, or Alt Tab to go over to your browser where you've got Postman. If you're just trying to replicate that whole UI inside of VS Code, they've still got to hit some kind of hotkey to get over to Postman in VS Code. So they're not really saving anything. Um, you're just building the UI again in a third interface, because we've already got the desktop client and the web client. They've got to keep those synchronized. Now they're going to have to synchronize a VS Code extension as well. And I worry that the team's going to get overloaded on like make sure when we implement this feature that we're implementing it exactly the same on all these different interfaces. So I'm hoping that they'll simplify it a little bit for VS Code, that it's not going to be the full like API production with the open API and all that stuff. Like I don't know that that's as needed. Well, I mean some parts of that will be, yeah. But like some of the stuff they're just not going to need to replicate in the VS Code extension. So hopefully we'll get some good feedback from our users over like what their expectations are and stuff like that. Let's see. Who else is online doing software? Got some people doing some infrastructure upgrades. Got a whole bunch of people that I've never actually seen before and what they're doing with coding. Let's see. All right, I think we'll go right over to this person. I don't know them. I don't follow them myself. Or actually, I do follow them, but I don't. I haven't really. We've never raided over to their channel, so we'll go right over to them. Let me go back over to my chat window, and then we will raid. Oh, Mine Wolf just started streaming for 100 devs, but we've raided over to Claire a bunch of times, so we'll raid over to somebody new. So I'm gonna stream Tuesday night. I'm not gonna stream on Thursday this week. So we'll catch everybody over on Manny's stream over here. It is flagged as mature audience, so we'll see what that stream is gonna be like. But yeah, we'll see you over there. Be friendly, be supportive, and we'll catch you Tuesday, and then we'll catch you next Sunday. Thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for the questions. See you, Darth Gollum, and we'll catch you over in the other stream here in a minute.